Marcus Reid hit the corner of Elmwood Drive at just past 9 in the morning, standing on the pedals of his old black bicycle, leaning into the hill like a man with somewhere important to be. His jacket was plain, his shoes unremarkable, and the silver threads at his temples caught the light as he coasted past a row of trimmed hedges that lined his in-laws' property. He could already hear the voices spilling out from the open patio, the laughter that carried a particular ring of people who had never once questioned their own comfort. He slowed at the iron gate, clicked the kickstand down, and looped his chain to the post the way he always did, unhurried, unbothered. And then he heard it. Good Lord, is that Marcus? On a bicycle? Again. Brendan Holloway was leaning against the patio railing with a glass of orange juice, wearing a linen shirt that probably cost more than most people's car payments. He was grinning with the full, open confidence of a man who had never been told no. Beside him stood two of his friends from the country club, both of them craning their necks to look at Marcus the way people look at something strange on the side of the road. Every single time, Brendan said, shaking his head. My sister married a man who rides a bicycle to a Sunday brunch. You cannot write this kind of comedy. The laughter that followed was sharp and brief, like a hand clap. Marcus unlatched the gate and walked through without changing his expression. Patricia Holloway appeared at the patio door in a cream blazer, her reading glasses pushed to the top of her head, her lips pressed into the thin smile she reserved for moments when she was pretending to be gracious. Marcus, sweetheart, she said, you could have let Diana drive you. You didn't have to. I like the ride, Marcus said. Of course you do, she said, with a warmth that had no heat behind it at all. Gerald Holloway was seated at the head of the long patio table, his reading newspaper folded in half, his coffee steaming beside him. He was a large man with broad shoulders and the slow, deliberate movements of someone who had decided long ago that the world would wait for him. He looked at Marcus over the rim of his reading glasses and gave him a single nod. That was always the full extent of it. One nod, like Marcus was a staff who had arrived on time. Good morning, Gerald, Marcus said. Morning, Gerald said, and lifted his newspaper back into place. Diana came to the patio door a moment later, and something in Marcus's chest settled the way it always did when he saw her. She was carrying a bowl of fruit, her dark hair pinned loosely, and she gave him a look that said she had already heard Brendan's comment and was already tired of it. She set the bowl on the table and kissed Marcus on the cheek. You're here, she said quietly. Told you I would be, he said. Brendan pulled out a chair with theatrical flair and gestured at it like a game show host. Please, Marcus, sit. Rest those powerful cycling legs. More laughter. One of the country club friends actually slapped the railing. Marcus sat down. He reached for the coffee carafe and poured himself a cup. I'm serious, though, Brendan said, dropping into the chair across from him with the ease of someone who had been performing his whole life. Diana, babe, you've been married to this man for 3 years. 3 years. He still doesn't own a car? He owns a car, Diana said, her voice careful. One car. A 4-year-old Volvo. Meanwhile, you're driving that second-hand SUV because Brendan counted on his fingers your husband, who supposedly runs some company, can barely keep up with the basic markers of, I don't know, adulthood. Brendan, Diana said, I'm just asking. You're not just asking, she said. You're performing. Gerald lowered his newspaper. The boy has a point, Diana. I've said nothing for 3 years because it's your life, but your mother and I do wonder. He paused. What exactly does your company do, Marcus? Remind me. Marcus wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. Asset management, he said. Private equity. Infrastructure development. And it's doing well, you'd say? It is. Gerald made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but lived in the same neighborhood. Asset management. On a bicycle. Patricia set a basket of pastries on the table. We're not attacking you, Marcus. We just want the best for Diana. You understand? I understand, Marcus said. But here's the thing about Marcus Reid. The thing none of the Holloways at that table with their linen shirts and their country club memberships and their casual cruelty actually knew. Marcus Reid was worth $4.3 billion. And the bicycle was a choice. If you've been watching this story unfold and you already have a feeling about where this is going, go ahead and drop a comment below. Tell me what you think these people deserve. And if you're new here, subscribe now because you do not want to miss the second half of this. The morning Marcus Reid was 12 years old, he woke up to the sound of breaking glass. He remembered lying still in his bed on the second floor of their home on Crescent Hill, the biggest house on the street, with its wide staircase and its portraits in the hallway, and the smell of his mother's perfume that seemed woven into every curtain. He remembered thinking the sound was an accident, something knocked from a shelf. And then he heard his father's voice, low and controlled in the way it only ever got when something was genuinely wrong. And then another voice, a stranger's voice, hard and flat and terrible. He was told later that there had been 3 of them. They had come for the safe his father kept in the study. His father had refused to open it. That was the kind of man Thomas Reid had been, a man who stood his ground in the middle of the night in his own home because he believed that some things were worth fighting for, and it had cost him everything. By the time the police arrived, Thomas Reid and his wife, Eleanor, were both gone. Marcus was placed with his uncle in a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. His uncle, to his credit, was not a cruel man. He was simply a tired one. He worked 2 jobs and came home with nothing left in him. And Marcus understood very quickly that the life he had known, the security, the warmth, the feeling that someone was watching over him, was gone. Not damaged, gone. Like a house that had not merely caught fire, but had burned all the way down to the foundation, so that even the shape of it had disappeared. He was 16 when he got his first job, bagging groceries at the store on Meridian Avenue. He was 18 when he started community college, paying his own tuition 1 semester at a time. He was 22 when he took his first real risk, pooling 3 years of savings into a small stake in a logistics company that his college friend James Whitfield swore was about to break through. James had been right. It had broken through. And Marcus had reinvested every cent of the return into the next thing, and the next, with the precision and patience of a man who had learned at 12 years old that the world could take everything from you overnight, so you had better understand exactly what you were building and why. He had built it quietly. He had always believed that the loudest people in the room were usually the least secure, and he had no interest in being loud. He gave to hospitals. He funded scholarships in his parents' names. He ate simply. He rode his bicycle in the morning because it was the one habit from his poorest years that had made him feel genuinely free, and he had never found a reason to give it up. He had met Diana at a charity event 4 years ago. She had been standing at the edge of the crowd, looking at a painting with the focused expression of someone who actually wanted to understand it rather than be seen looking at it. He had liked that immediately. He had introduced himself as Marcus. Just Marcus. No titles, no company name, nothing attached. And she had introduced herself as Diana. And they had talked for 2 hours about the painting, about art in general, about the city, about what it meant to want something badly enough to make it the center of your life. He had not told her the full picture until 6 months in, and by that point it had not mattered to her the way he had worried it might. She had not gasped or recalibrated. She had just nodded slowly and said, "Okay, so you're very private." And he had said yes, and she had said she could live with that as long as he was always honest with her. And he had been. He told her everything. He just told almost no one else. The hollow ways had come with a marriage, and he had accepted them the way a man accepts weather. Not all of it was pleasant, but all of it was real, and he was not the kind of person who pretended things were other than what they were. Brendan was insecure and dressed it in performance. Gerald was proud and dressed it in authority. Patricia loved her daughter and dressed her anxiety in criticism of other people's choices. Marcus understood all of them. He just could not make them understand him without showing them something he was not ready to show. Not yet. The brunch that Sunday ended the way those brunches always ended, with Gerald making a remark about financial planning that was aimed at Marcus but fired in Diana's direction, and with Patricia squeezing Diana's arm in the doorway and saying something just low enough that Marcus could not hear it, and Brendan walking Marcus to the gate with his hands in his pockets and a smirk that had never once, in 3 years, gone all the way to his eyes. "You're a good sport," Brendan said. "I'll give you that." "Good morning, Brendan," Marcus said. He unlocked his bicycle, swung his leg over, and rode home. He was halfway down the hill when his phone rang. He pulled over at the curb and answered it. "Tell me you saw the Forbes piece." James said, "Not yet." Marcus said, "Marcus, it's live. They ran the full profile. Photograph, number, the infrastructure deal in Nairobi, the whole thing. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When did it go up? This morning, 6 a.m. It's been shared 40,000 times. Your phone is about to start ringing off the hook. Marcus looked down the road. The morning light was stretching long and golden across the asphalt. All right, he said. All right. James laughed. That's it? All right. What would you like me to say? I don't know. Something. It's Forbes, man. 4.3 billion. They put you in the top 50. I saw the draft, Marcus said. Your in-laws are going to lose their minds. Marcus said nothing. Diana knows. James said quieter now. She always knew. But the rest of them, Gerald and the whole circus? James whistled. Brother, the world is about to get very interesting for you. Marcus thanked him, hung up, and sat on his bicycle for a moment at the side of the road. He was not savoring anything. He was not rehearsing what he would say when the calls came. He was thinking about a 12-year-old boy in a dark bedroom listening to a stranger's voice downstairs, and the 40-year-old man that boy had become, and the distance between those 2 points, and everything it had cost across it. Stay with this story because the best part is coming. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because stories like this one come out every week. The first call came from Patricia at 11:17 that same morning. Marcus was in his kitchen, making lunch when he saw her name on the screen. He let it ring twice before he answered. Marcus, she said, and her voice was different. The careful warmth was gone. What was in its place was something more genuine and more complicated. I'm calling because Gerald was just reading the news, and there's a Forbes article, and it has your name and your company and a photograph, and the number they're reporting is... She stopped. Is it accurate? Yes, Marcus said. There was a long pause. He could hear Gerald's voice in the background, low and urgent. Why didn't you tell us? Marcus set down his knife. What would it have changed, Patricia? Another pause, longer this time. Everything, she said quietly, and he could not tell if she meant it as an accusation or an answer. Brendan's call came at noon. It was a most interesting one, because for the first 45 seconds Brendan said almost nothing. He opened with, hey, and then there was silence, and Marcus let the silence sit there between them like something that needed to be looked at. So, the bicycle thing, Brendan finally said. What about it? You were just... What? You wanted to? You just liked riding it. I've ridden it every morning for 20 years, Marcus said. I'm not going to stop because it makes someone uncomfortable. Brendan made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and something rawer. I've been an idiot, he said. You've been unkind, Marcus said. There's a difference. Marcus, Brendan stopped. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Brendan, but I want you to think about something. What if I hadn't had any money? What if everything you assumed about me had been true? Would that have made the way you spoke to me acceptable? Silence. Because you weren't laughing at a poor man who didn't belong in your family, Marcus said. You were laughing at the idea of one. That's the part worth examining. Brendan said nothing. Come by the office sometime, Marcus said. I'll show you what asset management on a bicycle looks like. He hung up. Diana was in the living room when he came in from the kitchen. She had her phone face down on the coffee table, and she was looking at the window with an expression. He had learned to read in the way you learn to read weather, a particular kind of tired that was not physical. Your mother called, he said. I know, she said. She called me too. She turned to look at him. Are you all right? I'm fine, he said. Marcus. Her voice was soft. You know, you could have told them. You could have said something years ago and saved yourself all of this. I know, he said. So why didn't you? He sat down beside her. He thought about how to answer it honestly. Because I needed to know that the people in my life were there for the right reasons, he said. Your parents, your brother. I needed to know what they thought of me when they thought I had nothing worth having. I needed to see that clearly. Diana was quiet for a moment. And now you see it. Now I see it, he said. She reached over and took his hand. They sat like that for a while without talking. The way two people can when they have built enough of something together that silence does not feel like a gap. Outside the window, his bicycle leaned against the wall of the house. the chain gleaming in the afternoon light. If you can feel this moment, if you understand what it cost this man to sit in that room with those people for 3 years and never flinch, tell me in the comments, because this is not just a story. This kind of thing happens every single day. The dinner happened on a Thursday, 11 days after the Forbes article went live. Patricia had called Diana to organize it, had used the phrase, a chance for all of us to speak honestly, which is the kind of language people use when they want to apologize without having to say the word. Diana had told Marcus, and Marcus had said they would go, and that had been the full extent of his preparation. The Holloway house was different that evening in ways that were small but unmistakable. The table was set with the good china, the kind that usually only came out for Christmas. Gerald was wearing a tie. Patricia had cooked herself instead of having it catered, which Marcus recognized as its own kind of statement. Brendan was there with his girlfriend, a quiet woman named Sylvie who had apparently been told only the broad strokes and spent most of the evening looking at Brendan with the focused expression of someone recalibrating a significant amount of information. They sat down and Gerald poured the wine himself, which he had also never done, and then he cleared his throat and looked at Marcus directly for the first time Marcus could remember. "I owe you an apology," Gerald said. The table went quiet. Even the candles seemed to hold still. "I have not treated you fairly," Gerald continued, and the words were coming out measured, like a man reading from something he prepared but was trying to make sound unrehearsed. "I made assumptions about you based on what I could see, and what I could see, a young man without obvious wealth, without the markers I was used to associating with success, led me to conclusions that were wrong. And the way those conclusions affected the way I spoke to you and allowed my son to speak to you was not right." Marcus let him finish. Then he nodded. "Thank you, Gerald." "Is that all you're going to say?" Brendan asked. "What else would you like me to say?" "I don't know. I thought you'd be angrier." "I was angry," Marcus said. "I was angry for about 3 years. But I spent that time building something instead of spending it, and now I'd rather look forward than back." He lifted his glass. "To honesty," he said, "which is better late than never." Gerald lifted his glass. Patricia lifted hers. Brendan looked at it for a moment, and then lifted it too. "To honesty," Diana said beside him, and the warmth in her voice was the realest thing in the room. The dinner stretched on for 3 hours. The conversation moved in the way conversations do when walls come down, a little tentative at first, and then gradually more open, finding its footing. Gerald asked Marcus about the infrastructure project in Nairobi, and for the first time he asked with genuine curiosity rather than the performance of it, and Marcus talked about it, about the roads being built and the supply chains being opened and the jobs being created, in the precise and passionate way he talked when someone actually wanted to hear him. Patricia asked about his parents, and Marcus told her about Thomas and Eleanor Reid in a way he had never spoken about them to the Holloways before, about his father's refusal and his mother's laugh, and the house on Crescent Hill, and the weight of carrying something that precious for 30 years. Patricia cried. She did not excuse herself. She just cried quietly into her napkin and said she was sorry, and Marcus believed her. Brendan was last, after dinner, when Diane and Sylvia had gone inside with Patricia, and Gerald had stepped out to take a call. Brendan sat across from Marcus on the patio with the same view they had shared at brunch 11 days ago, and this time there was no smirk. "The bicycle," Brendan said. "The bicycle," Marcus agreed. "You're going to ride it forever, aren't you? Just to remind us." Marcus smiled, and it reached his eyes completely. "I'm going to ride it forever because I love it," he said. "But I'd be lying if I said there was a small part of me that enjoys the look on your face." Brendan laughed. And this time it was real, the first genuinely real thing Marcus had ever heard from him. It was a good laugh, warm and a little helpless, the laugh of a man who had finally stopped performing. "Fair enough," Brendan said. "Fair enough." Marcus leaned back and looked at the evening sky above the garden, the last of the light folding itself into horizon. He thought about the boy who had bagged groceries on Meridian Avenue and paid for his own tuition one semester at a time. He thought about James's voice on the phone saying it's Forbes. Man, and the particular silence of a Sunday brunch table when something true enters a room. He thought about Diana's hand in his, and the weight of a bicycle chain looped through an iron gate, and all the mornings he had pedaled into the wind with his jacket pressed flat against his chest, going somewhere. He had always been going somewhere. The Holloways had just never asked where. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who had no idea who they were looking at, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments right now. Every single one of them gets read. And before you click away, make sure you subscribe and like this video, because there are more stories just like this one waiting for you right here every single week. Marcus Reid rode home that night under a full sky. The lights of the city spread below the hill like something he'd already earned, which he had, one pedal stroke at a time.